I was Andy's little sister, and, I always wanted to be wherever he was. Andy definitely wanted to start a family. The first time he met Stephanie, I felt like, they would be a good match for each other. Stephanie didn't really talk about her family or about her past. And it does make you wonder if there was more to this story than we know. It does make you wonder if there was more to this story than we know. She definitely had that Jekyll and Hyde kind of behavior.
Looking back on it now, there's some signs that we probably missed.
It's hard to think that somebody that I let in my life is capable of something so horrible.
Turn to 911.
Oh my God. I need help really bad. God.
Andy was my older brother. Everybody loved him. We did have a great relationship growing up. I was 10 and Andy had just turned 16 when my dad passed away. That was very hard. Andy was there and was ready to take on anything he needed to take on as the man of the house. And he made sure me and my mom were both very well taken care of. Andy always wanted to be a police officer for as long as I can remember.
I worked many years with Andy Kimbrell on night shift and through the different assignments. And he was the nicest, positive attitude, happy, eager, every definition that you could think of as a good friend, a good police officer that would fit him to a T.
When Andy came to work for the Vestavia Hills Police Department in October of 2002, he was assigned to my shift. When you describe a police officer as to serve and protect, that's exactly what he did. Always wanting to do things for other people. A real happy, positive guy.
Andy and Dawn were high school sweethearts. Him and Dawn had a great relationship. You could just feel the love between them when you were around them. Dated for years before they got married. They were, beyond excited to welcome a child, and especially a little girl. They were thrilled to be parents.
He was the happiest he could ever be was when him and his wife had the baby.
I would say that it was a dream come true for him. And then subsequently, there were some medical conditions and medical issues that took a turn, and tragically, his wife passed. To say that his world stopped would be an absolute understatement.
Dawn passed away shortly after their daughter was born. He struggled. I'm sure, having a new baby was a lot for him, and then, shortly losing his wife was a whirlwind for him at the time, and he was never the same.
Watching one of your own officers go through what he had to go through was very traumatic for all of us.
But, just like he did when my father passed away, he really just stepped up and did what he needed to do, and was a great father to Emma. We always hoped that Andy would find just happiness again, just genuine happiness. He met Stephanie at a school carnival. Her son was the same age as Andy's daughter, and so they were kind of at the same stage in life. I felt like, they would be a good match for each other. When they were together, you could tell they were enjoying each other's company, and, there was an attraction there. You could definitely see that as well. Andy would be kind of silly and just very affectionate. It was nice to see Andy happy. Stephanie, her and I, we would go out to lunch occasionally. I always wanted a sister-in-law, to be able to be close to, and I wanted to get to know her. I wanted to be a part of their lives. She was very quiet. She didn't really talk about, her family or about her past, what her background was, or any, personal details about herself. I remember not being completely comfortable to ask her those things because she wasn't sharing those things with me automatically. Her background was definitely a mystery, and it does make you wonder, if there was more to this story than we know. One day, my mom came to me and said, I think Andy got married. And I, of course, was very caught off guard. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, he showed me this piece of paper and it looked like a marriage certificate. And I said, surely not. I said, surely he would have told us. I was a little bit shocked and, obviously hurt by, the fact that he had gone off and gotten married and didn't, tell us before or even after. Those are things you tell your family. And if you're not telling your family those things, there's a reason you're not telling them. It felt wrong. And, it made me wonder whose idea was this. I think there was some manipulation going on. After they had gotten married, you could notice some problems. They would seem to be arguing quite a bit. Stephanie definitely had a temper. I just remember thinking, something's not quite right. Andy didn't really go into a lot of details, but he definitely struggled. Kind of his whole world had been rocked at the point. She was very manipulative. I feel like she did things, to deliberately get a rise out of Andy. Stephanie absolutely knew how to press Andy's buttons. Her behavior definitely felt kind of mind game-ish, for lack of better words, and then so I definitely think that was kind of her lifestyle. There were instances where their arguments got out of control and got physical. There was one instance she threw Andy's belongings off the balcony of their apartment. They lived in a very, busy apartment at this point. So she had to know that other people were going to see it. And she may have very well done it to embarrass him. That's humiliating. When Andy and Stephanie would have arguments, Andy would go over to my mom's house. That was his escape to get away and kind of remove himself from the situation. Stephanie would follow him, essentially track him down. And Stephanie did show up at the house, banging on the front door. She called him and asked him to come outside. He went outside and she went immediately up to him and kissed him. He was very caught off guard by it and kind of stepped back because this, of course, is in the midst of an argument, and, asked her what that was about. And She said, I just wanted to see if there was anything there. And she said, and there's not. And I just remember thinking, well, that was very odd. It just seemed like she was playing a game. This is not normal. This is not okay. She definitely had that Jekyll and Hyde kind of behavior. She was most definitely trying to manipulate him and assert her dominance. That was definitely the moment that I stopped being friendly with her and stopped reaching out to her. At that point, I didn't know what the future held for their relationship. I never in a million years thought it was going to turn out the way it did.
Oh my God. Andy.
I could definitely see Andy trying to have his life appear to be as normal as possible. This is a photograph that Andy had posted on Facebook. It looks like a picture that actually Stephanie took of the two of them, and underneath it there is a comment that Stephanie posted that says, "Oh, who's that hot chick in your car?" Stephanie, it appears, has definitely doctored the photo. She seems to have a filter on her face. The post is all about her. But I also think that was in Andy's nature, to be all about her. Andy responds with, "That's the most beautiful and amazing woman in the world. My partner, my other half, my best friend, my wife, Stephanie Kimbrell." He thinks obviously very highly of her and seems to be very much in love. Thinking about it now, it makes me feel a little bit sick to my stomach. Andy, even if he knew 100% that that relationship was not a good situation, I don't think he ever would have said to us, "You're right." He just tried to be the tough guy police officer.
Andy would not have been the aggressor, in my opinion. Andy was not that type of person. He wasn't the type that would run from anything, but he was also not the person that was trying to provoke anything either. Looking back on it now, there's some signs that we probably missed.
I definitely think it was getting worse. There was a situation where Andy's daughter was on the phone through Snapchat with a friend of hers. And they could see them arguing. The friend could see Stephanie and her behavior. And had even brought up the situation to her mom. The girl was that concerned about what was taking place. If that was happening that night, it was probably happening much more frequently than we heard about or knew about.
In 2018, when I got reassigned, I would see him in passing, and there would be days that he wouldn't be as jovial as normal. There was a change in his demeanor.
We had both moved on to different assignments. I think each of us knew deep inside that we wanted to talk, but we just never went to that level.
Andy was secluding himself from us, and so that was very hard to wrap our minds around. The changes in his personality alone would show you that he was struggling. We never, openly saw him tearful, but you could definitely tell that he was struggling. But it really got to the point where he wasn't spending time with my mom that much. And one day Andy had came over to the house. He had asked me if I could print something out for him. You could tell he was not in the best mood. We were in the living room together, and my son was kind of tugging on his jeans and trying to get his attention. All he had to do was kind of reach down and pick him up and, something. And it didn't happen. I knew something was going on with him because that was not like him to do that, to go from this doting uncle to, somebody that's pretty much ignoring him. And that was really a moment, I guess, it was really a turning point for me to see that. And so very blatantly said, hey, I don't know what is going on with Stephanie or anything else, but, my child deserves to have an uncle that he knows. I'm here to help, but I'm not going to be the person you call when you need something. I want to be a part of your life. I proceeded to say some pretty hurtful things. Some I meant, some I didn't. And our relationship at that point became pretty much non-existent. That was the last conversation I had with him. I would reach out to him periodically just to, to say, hey, I just didn't get a response back. But I remember hearing their arguments became more frequent. The people that lived in the apartment complex reached out to us and told us they saw them arguing in the parking lot. These total strangers are reaching out to us, to tell us these stories. It's one thing to have an argument inside your home, but when you are completely, oblivious to that you're having an argument in the middle of a parking lot with people around, and, I definitely think that shows some sort of escalation, that things are getting out of control. There was one instance where he went to my mom's house and showed her scratches on his neck where Stephanie had put her hands on his neck. I don't know how they got there, if she was choking him or just had put her hands on him in some form or fashion, but there were visible scratches on his neck that appeared to be, pretty significant. I think most people, including myself, when they hear of a domestic violence situation, you automatically assume it's probably initiated by a male, but things are not always what they seem. My mother was upset. She was obviously very fearful for him. Her words were, please come home. You need to get away from her. She's going to kill you. It wasn't a good situation for Andy or Stephanie or the kids. Anybody involved in it. On all sides, it was not a good situation. And it is heartbreaking to watch. He never came out and said, yes, I know that our relationship is not right.
I think that Andy just didn't know how to, or didn't know where to go to for help.
He was just completely hiding it from everybody. I think that he was good at turning it on when he needed to turn it on, that I'm fine, I'm good, just let me go to work.
But knowing Andy and the type of person he was, he wanted to fix it. We were frustrated watching it all fold out and wanting to just take him and, and shake him and say, listen to us, please do something.
Turn to 911.
Oh my God. I need help really bad.
Yeah, calm down.
I am freaking out. Please come and help.
What's going on?
My husband and I were having a disagreement. He put his gun in my hand and it just went off. I'm telling you, I had no idea that was loaded.
You shot your husband, ma'am?
Yes.
You're being responsive right now, ma'am?
I see you gurgling, but no. Oh my God. Oh my God. Andy. Andy. Andy.
About 11:15, I received a phone call from our deputy chief of police, and he said, Andy Kimbrell's been shot. And I was like, where's he at? And he said, he's on his way to UAB. Andy was still alive, and I said, I'm headed to the hospital.
We were asleep in bed, and I got a call, one of the captains from Vestavia Police Department, and his words, I will probably never forget them, were, Andy's been shot, and it doesn't look good. I remember just panic, just absolutely panic, and just not knowing what to do. I didn't know. I mean, I assumed it happened at work, you know, but I didn't know, how do I tell my mom this? What do I say? What, you know, what's next? I didn't know what to do.
They brought him down to the hospital. So I walked into the emergency room, and I met with the nurse and met with the doctor. They let me in the room where they were working on him, and you know, I just remember walking in and seeing Andy laying there, and his head was bandaged up, and I could see one of his eyes. But I just remember looking at him and going, wake up. And that's when I found out that he had been shot in the head. They had him on a ventilator, and they said, we're trying to track his brain activity. And everybody was frantically trying to do anything they could for him. And so I remember asking the doctor, if he's shot in the head, is he going to make it?
When I first got the call, my sergeant called me and told me that there had been a shooting at an apartment in Garndale. When I arrived on the scene, I entered the master bedroom. The walk-in closet is to your left, and about middle ways down the wall, there's a door leading into the bathroom. There was a bloody handprint on the toilet. Inside the closet, I could definitely see blood splatter. On one side of the wall, there was a large pool of blood in the corner. At first glance at the blood splatter, I could tell that it was not a long-range shot, that it was fairly close. The gun was a 9mm Glock, fairly standard issue for law enforcement. A shell casing was right outside the door of the closet on the floor of the bedroom. Whoever fired the shot was standing in the doorway of the closet or very close to the doorway of the closet. After leaving the scene, we returned to the police department. Stephanie had been placed in the interview room. We just kind of introduced ourselves, and she agreed to speak to us.
When we have a disagreement, we can't just talk. Andy can't talk. He gets really upset. He's a high-stress, high-anxiety person. So I can't talk to him because he immediately is mad, and then he storms off. And then he comes back, and then he storms, you know, that's just how things go.
What was that argument? What was that particular time? What was the argument?
The whole thing. 90% of him being mad all last night was that trainer. I said, okay, I'm not doing anything wrong. You have nothing to worry about. Just reasonable, rational conversation. I've never been unfaithful to you. I don't so much as look at other men. You don't want to hear none of it. Lies, lies, lies. BS, BS, BS.
Stephanie told us that he'd accused her in the past of being unfaithful. So according to Stephanie, this argument wasn't out of the blue. She was basically painting a picture of her being just an extremely calm, non-combative, non-argumentative person.
I don't know, we were just scuffling and...
Did he hit you or grab you?
No, nobody hit.
Is he holding you against the wall? Or
He just grabbed me, and I was
standing there holding you like this?
in front of the closet, and he spun around and went and got the gun and pulled it out of the holster and shoved it at, like, my hand.
How did he hand it to you? You remember?
He just shoved it. Like, his hands weren't even off it.
Did you say anything to him?
It happened so fast, and pow. I don't even think, I don't even know. I don't know.
I've been in law enforcement for over 24 years. I've never seen a gun just go off. On a Glock, the safety is actually on the trigger. So in order to disengage the safety, you have to pull the trigger. So, it was obvious that the trigger was pulled.
When he tried to give you the gun and put it in your chest, why didn't you just walk away from it? I mean, you had a way to get out of there. All you had to do is like, hey, and turn around. But you went and grabbed for the gun.
No, I didn't reach for it and grab for it. That's not what happened.
I mean, your hands had to be outward, or they would have touched the gun. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know. It just happened so fast.
I know that if someone is trying to shove something at me that I don't want, I'm not going to reach for it. I'm going to back away, or I'm going to put my hands up. I'm not going to grab it. The longer she talked, the more question marks and red flags kept popping up.
Under her story, they were both standing up, and Andy had the gun in his hands, and he shoves it into her hands when the gun went off. But the fatal wound, the only wound on Andy, was a bullet strike to his forehead, just above the hairline.
We're trying to figure out why the wound, entry wound, would be on the top of his head. Was he kneeling down?
Bent towards me.
I don't think he can really be bent over far enough to where the rat hits him in the top of the head.
It just wasn't possible for a gun to go off at waist level and the entry wound be basically on the top of the head. It just didn't make sense.
Can we find out about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's at the hospital and the doctors are taking care of him, so.
When we got to the hospital, one of the pastors that the police department uses was there. I don't even remember what he said, but made mention of the coroner. And that's the moment that we learned he had died. And that's the moment that I learned that Stephanie had shot him. I just remember being in shock. This has to be an accident. This has to be, what could have happened? Did she realize what she was doing? Did she, was it an accident? Was it, I'd never, and even to this day, it's hard to wrap my mind that she possibly could have a gun in her hand and fire it at him. It's hard to make sense of that.
just got off the phone with the doctors, and I'm sorry to tell you this, but he's passed away.
I mainly kind of wanted to just gauge her reaction. And so, in an interview, you can see me just kind of laser focused on her, really. She sounded upset, but when she raised her head up, she wasn't crying.
And they're in the moment of, letting family members know and stuff like that. So kind of go over there.
I looked directly into her eyes, and they were dry as a bone. There was no tears in her eyes whatsoever. What really happened was really going on here. What Stephanie didn't know was down the hall, we had several witnesses that were present in the house that night.
I'm Detective Fennell from the police department, and you are Emma.
When I was told that, it changed everything. Down the hall, we had Stephanie's son and Andy's daughter.
I'm Detective Fennell from the police department, and you are Emma.
Andy's daughter begins to talk, and she kind of just starts describing what she's been through, and again, the loss of her mom at a young age, and now the loss of her father. It was very tough not to get emotional interviewing her.
How long after they got together did they start this argument?
When they were dating, they would argue a lot, so I didn't think they would last long because they kept on arguing.
Mm-hmm. So they've been kind of bickering and fighting from the beginning.
Yeah.
During the arguments, who seemed to be the more aggressive?
She seemed more aggressive.
She did.
My dad screams, but she's more because I know she's hit him maybe once. And I remember him saying she put him against the wall. It was on his knees like that.
According to what we were told, Stephanie was the physical abuser in the relationship. She was the verbal abuser in the relationship. That painted quite a different picture than what Stephanie was telling us. At one point in the evening, she had received a text from Andy saying, lock your doors, she's crazy.
Around 8, I texted, he told me to keep my door locked or something because she was screaming.
Stephanie's son advised us that he was asleep the entire time and he didn't hear anything.
When you went to sleep, when you go to sleep, you just gotta lay there, or what happened? You did go to sleep? Okay. So you didn't hear, okay, all right. So after you went to sleep, you wouldn't woke up by arguing or yelling or any loud noises or anything like that? Nothing like that? You pretty sound asleep?
Andy's daughter, she was a very important witness because not only was she directly across the hallway from the incident, she was awake the entire time.
I feel it was 10:30, something close to 11, and I heard her say something give me your gun or something. I'm gonna
When you were down there waiting on it, you and your sister talked, right? Y'all were talking. What was said? Remember?
I'm not sure what happened. And she said that she asked him for his gun, and he said, "Fine, here it is." And they shoved it in her hand, and she knew it was loaded and about 500. Yeah.
And he said, okay, and then gave it to her. I stayed because I heard that, and then it went off, and I just heard it pop.
When Andy's daughter made the comment to us, It changed everything. I know in my mind, this just changed from an accident to a possible murder. We went back down the hall and spoke with Stephanie again, and we confronted her with that detail.
He said something to the effect of, if you think I'm so bad, then shoot me.
Oh, yeah, he talks to me like that all the time.
And then you replied, well, then give me your gun.
No.
So you...
I have never asked for that gun.
Okay, so if let's hypothetically say if your kids said that they heard that, they would be lying.
Lying? No. They didn't hear what they think they heard.
See, well, what you don't understand is they're in two bedrooms with the door shut, and y'all are loud enough. But they just didn't make this up.
And they did say that.
And they did say that.
I don't know what to tell you.
Her credibility in my eyes was over. It was done.
In the mugshot, she's clearly injured. Defense attorneys and certainly members of the public, they get to see the mugshot, had some suspicions as to how she got her injuries and been blaming the victim, Andy.
Like this comment here in the picture, you can tell she's been hit. She doesn't deserve to be in jail if she was defending herself.
It's extremely hard to read these comments, just absolutely heartbreaking. The first post says, probably beat her many times before and got away with it. More than likely, she was tired of the abuse. Andy was never abusive to her. You want to scream it from the rooftops, but there's some people that are gonna, question the situation, and especially after seeing her booking photo.
This is a video that was taken from the jail surveillance footage that shows Stephanie Keller while she is in custody and handcuffed. This was taken a few hours before her mugshot. The video itself was interesting, to say the least. And she essentially takes a step towards the vending machine. She nails the vending machine with her face. It would seem to be a very intentional act.
It's very difficult to not be able to reach out to these people that are saying these horrible things, and tell them, you're wrong, this is not how this is. This is a very different situation. When we went to the trial, any doubt that I had that this was a horrible accident just went away very quickly. It's hard to think that somebody that I let in my life and had a relationship with is capable of something so horrible. It's a hard pill to swallow to think about that.
When Andy's daughter testified, her story was very impactful for the members of the court. It was impactful for the jury. The judge did come down with a sentence of 20 years in the penitentiary for Stephanie Keller, and that was the maximum under provocation manslaughter.
I think that the sentence that she received was appropriate. I mean, you know, nothing is ever enough. It will never be enough. But it also won't change it, no matter what it is.
As a police officer, we're usually the ones that say, hey, here's how you handle this situation. And when we can't do that for ourselves, we question ourselves as to whether we're a failure. And so we have to reach out for help just like everybody's reaching out for us to help.
Losing Andy had a very much an emotional impact on the department. Every member of the police department was at the funeral.
People came from everywhere, you know, and they just heard about it and wanted to come and show their respect. It makes you so proud to be driving down the road and seeing flags that are, you know, for him. It was definitely a moment to be proud of him. I mean, I will always be proud of him. He was a really great person and a great father. You know, I wanted to remember all the good things that he did as a police officer. Honestly, if I could say anything to her, I would ask her why. I think she's a horrible person. I think she... I don't even know if I should say this, but I think she is... This could happen again, given the opportunity.